Welcome to This Explainer. I am honestly so thrilled to have you here today because we're unpacking a really fascinating psychological concept that, well, it might just completely change how you see yourself. For decades, our schools and institutions have deeply rewarded logic, fast math, memorized trivia, the whole shebang. But research actually points to a hidden, incredibly powerful fifth type of intelligence, one that goes way, way beyond traditional book smarts. Today, we're exploring metacognitive IQ, basically the science of thinking about thought.
Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever looked at someone who's just incredibly book smart? Like maybe they have a PhD or they can solve insane equations on the fly, but then they completely fall apart when it comes to basic life decisions? Or on the flip side, maybe you know someone without a fancy degree who just navigates the world with this eerie level of self-awareness and success. Why does that happen? Being traditionally smart doesn't always translate to life success, and I'm sure most of us have seen or experienced this firsthand. The answer? It actually lies in a hidden layer of intelligence.
All right, moving right along to Section 1, the hidden intelligence beyond book smarts.
So we're stepping into the very first layer of a true self-discovery journey here. Psychology suggests that beyond just raw processing power, there's a much rarer, vastly more powerful psychological architecture at play in highly successful, self-aware individuals. It's defined as metacognitive awareness. Basically, it's the rare ability to not just generate thoughts, but to literally step back, watch yourself think, and continually adjust your strategy. Now, what's super interesting about this is looking at the exact opposite. Psychology actually shows us that the biggest sign of lower intelligence is, well, believing you're already smart enough and refusing to question yourself. Metacognition is the absolute opposite of that rigid mindset. And this brilliantly illustrates the core difference. Traditional intelligence, it's often built on speed, fast math, quick recall, being the first to buzz in with trivia. But metacognitive IQ is an entirely different beast. It's built on cognitive detachment, self-observation, and patience. It's that rare ability to observe your own internal biases and analyze your raw emotional reactions as if they belonged to, an entirely different person. It's literally challenging your own logic before anyone else even gets the chance to.
Let's shift gears to Section 2, the internal simulator, predictive processing.
Now, if you've always felt just a little bit out of sync with how other people make decisions, pay close attention here. What you might have spent your entire life considering a personal flaw is, in reality, a high-level psychological feature. The first hallmark is predictive processing. Before a highly metacognitive person even walks into a room, their brain is running these complex internal simulations. They imagine exactly how a conversation is going to unfold, what the other person might say, how their specific response could alter the whole outcome. It's like rehearsing your exact order at the coffee shop 10 times in your head before you even reach the barista. Society loves to label this as overthinking, right? But it's actually advanced strategic modeling. Your brain is beautifully modeling possibilities and adjusting strategies before the event even happens. Which brings us to another absolutely fascinating sign, cognitive patience. Most people feel this desperate rush to be right, to be the first one to blurt out an answer. But if you have high metacognitive IQ, you purposely delay judgment. You allow ideas to just sit. You examine them from multiple angles before deciding what you truly believe. You recognize the world isn't black and white, and that helps you avoid the overconfidence bias that completely traps less flexible thinkers. You absolutely prefer precision over simply being the first to speak. All right, on to Section 3, the social cost, invisible patterns. As incredible as all this internal processing is, there is definitely a social price to pay for having such a highly observant mind. If you've ever found social events just completely draining, this is going to make perfect sense. Because your brain is wired to observe and analyze, you start to notice invisible patterns everywhere. You pick up on subtle behavioral inconsistencies, forced laughter, attention-seeking drama, fake behavior, you name it. And because you spot these things instantly, you naturally develop a very low tolerance for inauthenticity. You kind of just stop playing along with the surface-level small talk and that constant need for validation the world seems to run on. Honestly, you'd probably much rather just sit in silence than pretend to laugh at a bad joke, right? There's a quote here that really hits the nail on the head, being trapped in mental observation mode, where you're busier analyzing the truth of a person than actually bonding with them. If you catch yourself doing this, I want to reassure you right now, you aren't being rude, and you certainly aren't being arrogant. You are simply operating on a highly analytical social frequency. Your brain prioritizes truth and authenticity over casual bonding. It's a gift, really, even if it occasionally makes you feel a bit isolated from the crowd. Next up, Section 4, dreaming versus doing, bridging the gap.
Having a powerful analytical mind is incredible, for sure. But there's often this massive psychological gap between analyzing a situation and actually taking physical action to hit a goal. We all know people who are addicted to potential. They talk about big goals for years but never actually change, mostly because they confuse thinking with progress. And this happens because the brain literally releases reward chemicals just for imagining success. So the crucial point here is that high metacognitive awareness spots this trap with clinical precision. It means realizing when you're addicted to potential and forcing yourself to act despite how you feel, rigorously tracking your actual physical effort instead of just soaking up the high of imagined success.
Which leads us directly to a fascinating, kind of contrarian truth, mastering the neutral mood pivot. It turns out relying on a huge emotional burst of inspiration is actually a trap. Actually, scratch that. It's a massive trap. Emotions are highly unreliable. Having high metacognition means understanding that your feelings absolutely do not dictate your actions. You don't need to feel motivated to start. You just pivot to the work completely neutrally and let the momentum build from the action itself.
And that brings us to Section 5, Rewiring Through Failure, Updating Software.
This right here is where metacognitive IQ truly separates the dreamers from the achievers. Think of it exactly like updating your software. When a highly metacognitive person fails, they don't sit around blaming the world or complaining about how unfair everything is. They look inward. They treat their own identity like lines of code, like software that can simply be analyzed, tweaked, and updated. If your current habits aren't getting you where you want to go, you step back, analyze those behavior patterns, debug the system, and update your self-image to match your goals. It's a completely objective process.
If this explainer is resonating with you today, the research offers some incredibly validating news. You aren't broken. You aren't weird. If your thoughts move in complex layers rather than just a straight line, and if you lose interest in things the exact second you fully figure out how they work, well, that is a clear sign of a rare, high-level architecture in your mind. You are designed for deep understanding rather than just simple belonging.
Which leaves us with one final provocative question to end on today. Are you ready to start watching yourself think? Now that you know about this hidden layer of intelligence, the one that shapes your reactions, your social life, and your ability to actually execute, the power is entirely in your hands. Observe your mind, spot the traps, and update your software. Thank you so much for diving deep with me in this explainer today, and I'll catch you in the next one.